gentlemen, we're in for an incredible night. Oh, we're taking it up a notch. I can't believe what I'm seeing right now. Wes and Mike TZ coming all strong.
Okay, now we are.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Conference Call. I am one of your hosts. My name is Chris Edwards, also known as Constantly Changing for Me here on social media. Next to me, I have TJ, also known as Bizarre Hodgepodge. And of course, at the bottom, we've got Rex, also known as
Boss Hog.
Rags and Pieces Mag. Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us for another episode of The Conference Call. Tonight, we have another great topic to bring to you, and I think this will be actually really interesting. We're gonna tonight's topic is punching down, discrimination amongst the discriminated, and what does that really mean? So we got a couple potential areas for discrimination, but before we get started, anybody want to say anything? I'm back. We didn't have a show last week because of me. A little brief update. Had the flu. Wasn't the flu. I had COVID. And actually, I still do have COVID technically because I haven't tested negative yet. But we still here and we doing it. I feel good. I'm fully vaccinated. Got all my booster shots. Didn't really have a lot of big symptoms. Just a little head cold. Still have that. And I did run a little bit of a fever over the weekend, hence why I tested again to see if I was positive, because the first time I tested negative last week. But all good. We're back. We're doing a show, and we're having we'll have a very lively and great topic and discussion tonight. So feel free, guys, to leave comments in the comment section below, and we'll definitely make sure we get to them. Thank you guys for joining us over these last few weeks as we've transitioned over to this YouTube space. You know, I think we look better. We sound a lot better on here, don't we?
Yes, God.
Okay. So with that being said, let's just jump into it. So as I mentioned earlier, tonight's topic is punching down, discrimination amongst the discriminated, and then the potential areas for discrimination. We've got 4 bullet points that we want to kind of touch on, and we'll just kind of dive into those and go from there. So 1, let's talk about femme-presenting men associated with dress, feminine vocal quality, body language, and posture. So basically what we're really talking about is, why is it that the LGBTQ community discriminates amongst themselves? You know, it's such a huge topic within the community. And one of those things is where you have men that are more femme-presenting, you know, and it really deals with how they present themselves, how they dress, how they speak, and the types of body language and their posture and how they hold themselves. What do you guys think about that? You know, what are the things that you hear in the community, and like, what's your stance and your position on those particular items? Feel free to jump in.
I'll let Rex go first.
Oh. Gotta go first.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No.
Come on, Professor.
Yeah, I think that it's sort of like a weird dynamic to be part of a group who is constantly fighting for, you know, equity and equality in all things, but performing the same things that they condemn others for. I think that's a really weird dynamic to have to confront, you know, just even on a daily basis. And sometimes it's in the smallest of things, but I guess that's something we'll get into.
Well, I'd say elaborate more on that.
So I guess, we're talking about femme presenting men, right? So I think that what I've noticed specifically in when it comes to denying or allowing people the right to masculinity or positions of power, or feeling as if they have the right to do or live just like anyone else without having to explain their existence or justify their life choices. I feel like femme presenting men are often condemned for sometimes something they can't even really control. I do realize that some men, like, they dress in ways that which they have the right to do that, but I dress in ways that is less masculine than others. But when you see them in like business culture or on social media or just in regular social settings, there's always an extra point of condemnation for this particular group of men.
TJ, what do you think?
I mean, I don't disagree. Yeah, like, you have the whole, you have people obviously on whatever app saying, mask for mask, MASC, yeah, for mask. So that's obviously masculine presenting people or men only looking for or discriminating against, or rather, I should say, only looking for masculine men and discriminating against feminine presenting people. And that obviously is a problem. In Rex, I think you can probably talk more or talk better about this than I can, but it's obviously a problem because it plays into the norms of heterosexuality. It plays into patriarchy. It plays into toxic masculinity, etc. So I guess the question is, why is that?
Yeah, I when I think about why, I think about it stemming from the necessity to subjugate women and femininity. And so anything associated with that, however loosely, right? I think that it's devalued in culture just in general, right? And I think that is how you see it show up in dynamics that are same sex, right? And when I think about like work culture, right? Because you think about how you often see people that are in same-sex partnerships or relationships, and in the workplace they have to present in like masculine ways in order to maintain whatever semblance of authority that they hope to project in order to be able to wield authority or rise in the workplace, have access to promotions and equal pay. And it's just another arm of discrimination. I've even read studies where gay men have been asked questions about how they feel about other gay men in the workplace, and they've often said that if they don't present in like a masculine way, then they have little to no respect for them, and it's very difficult to feel like you can report to or learn from someone who isn't exhibiting some sort of masculinity. And so that hyper-masculinity culture is happening across the board, regardless of what your sexual preference is.
Yeah. No, I think you're hitting on something that's really important. And I want to go back, and we have made some notes for this show. And I want to be able to read those. There are 3 points under this topic that I wanted to kind of read back. Both gay men and heterosexual men prefer masculine presenting men for high status roles, which you just talked about, Rex. According to a new study from the University of Sydney, leaving more feminine presenting gay men disadvantaged and facing internal bias, prejudice and potential discrimination in the workforce, including in hiring practices and promotion opportunities, which is it's very fair. It's another form of discrimination, but it's not one that's taken seriously, and it's not like when you can go to report to HR and they're going to actually probably even do something about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I think it's something that's, in a way, it's so new. There's a nuance to it that people don't know how to react to it, The second point was gay men are potentially blocking each other from positions of power and leadership due to the implicit bias He said, men are still expected to conform to more traditional masculine styles of leadership. And if they fail to conform to those styles sufficiently project masculine traits, they are at risk of status penalties. This is an example of internalized homophobia among the gay community and its impacts opportunities for these gay men, which we just talked about as well. You know, when you don't present a certain way, you stifle yourself, and you know, you make it harder for you to even make advancements in whatever structure that you're working with, that type of environment. You know, and I definitely witnessed that when working in corporate America. Not necessarily myself, because at the time I wasn't, you know, people didn't know who I really was. I wasn't letting people in. But I knew other people that were in managerial positions or leadership positions. They would never, ever allow others to see them in a more feminine role, even though you kind of knew that they were more on the feminine side, because they wouldn't be respected by their colleagues.
Right.
And then lastly, this homophobic bias is putting pressure on feminine presenting gay men to conform so they might be passable as a heterosexual man. And I mean, that just continues the stereotype of what's been going on for decades. You know, you got to fake it until you make it. And even when you do make it, you still have to be careful in who you present to, because that could negatively affect your career, even moving forward.
You know, it reminds me of an episode that I watched of that show, We're Here. Do you remember that show on HBO? And so I was thinking about how this lady she was actually in a heterosexual relationship, but she had a trans child, and she was afraid to support her trans child, even though she was doing it. She was worried about what they were going to do to her job. She was thinking about having to sell her house and having to leave Florida again. And to have to live somewhere else just because, you know, like, it was just a dangerous thing for her because she worked in the public school system.
Okay. Well, we know where Florida's going, so we'll just see how it goes.
Right.
All right. Excuse me. So let's keep this conversation moving. Let's move to the next one.
Actually, can we go back?
Yeah, no.
Because so we talked more so like, you know, in the business setting, but what about in dating?
Oh man.
So we are. Well,
I think you're more equipped to talk about that, TJ.
Yeah, but so I don't want to jump ahead, because we are going to talk about that and how it affects dating and even using of apps. We're definitely going to talk this. I'm not skipping it, but we are going to get to it. That is number 4. Yeah.
Okay.
So number 2, stigma associated with sexual position. Why non-heterosexual couples will reproduce heterosexual romantic relationships that deny each partner to freely express and secure what they need to be satisfied. So basically what this is saying is that non-heterosexual couples, you know, I think sometimes people can fall into the category of conforming to heterosexual norms as far as roles and sexual roles in a relationship. And when you put that stigma of, all right, well, you're the woman, you're the man, you're denying one partner the ability to really fully be sexually free and to express himself sexually in a way and in a manner that is appropriate for a homosexual individual. Correct?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, basically, I guess in a nutshell, this is people prescribing to the thought of, you know, there must be one person that's dominant, there must be one person that's submissive, there must be one person that's the top, there must be one person that's a bottom, and there is no in between.
Or flexibility, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think with both this subtopic and the prior one, it's, I guess what bothers me about it is, why do people allow themselves to, did we lose Rex?
No, he's here. His
there.
audio's still there.
Oh. Why do people allow themselves to, I guess, fall into those I don't want to say stereotypes, but those roles. And at some point, and I think honestly it comes with maturity. You know, at a certain point, I think you kind of grow out of those limiting and problematic ways of thinking. At least I would hope. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people. There's a ton of people, obviously, who feel that I guess sexually or romantically, there's nothing that two people who claim that they're, you know, tops, or two people who claim that they're bottoms or whatever, can't be happy together in any form or fashion. Yeah, and it's like, why? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Rex? We don't have no audio for you.
You're muted.
All right. I was thinking about that. I was thinking about that while TJ was talking, because it reminds me about how, like, I see all these conversations that happen on Twitter or on Facebook. What is it? Facebook, like Facebook groups, and you know, people are always like, "Oh, there are no real tops anymore," and it's almost like you have this subsection of men who like desperately desire that sort of that sort of like binary of masculine, feminine roles. They want to do the things and whatever. And if that's your energy and that works for you, fine. Like I can't tell people how to live their lives. However, I think that I agree with you, TJ, when you say that it has a lot to do with maturity and the willingness to let people be who they are rather than trying to prescribe a way of life for them. I think people will also say that about marriage amongst couples, but I don't think that marriage has to reflect a particular type of role, right? It could be anybody. You can have your marriage do whatever it needs to do for you. Like everybody do what they're comfortable with, or they have things that they do best, and the other person will do what they do best, and it's a partnership, you know. But I guess if more relationships were built on partnership rather than an outdated model of marriage, then maybe, you know, it will work a little bit better. I think also people just forget that marriage was never meant to, like, originally. So like marriage was designed as a financial arrangement and not really centered on love. And so if we can add additional components as we conceptualize marriage in a contemporary way, I feel like we should be able to continue to add that to suit the needs of all the people who participate in it.
I love that interpretation.
Yeah.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And for you know, ascribing roles, I think, you know, it's easy for people that are on the outside to do that versus, you know, people that are in any type of relationship, be it a marriage, a partnership, or a situation. They define it for whatever it is they want to define it for. You know, it tends to not really be a issue for the people in the relationship. They figure that out very early on in whatever they're doing. It's more about what everyone on the outside looking in wants to project onto you. And I hope that, you know, as TJ said, with maturity, you don't allow that to infest itself into your relationship. You know?
Also, I want to interject one thing before I forget. Once and for all, I would like to settle this debate about masculinity and bottoms, right? In my estimation, the bottom is the role of power in the sexual relationship.
Absolutely, because they control when it happens.
So if you wanted to associate masculinity with power, just following that sort of, you know, theoretical space, then you would have to say that the bottom role would be the most masculine role.
Okay. Yes. If you follow that logic,
right?
Yeah.
So I don't understand how that gets twisted when you're subscribing to a part of a theory and not following it all the way through.
Well, you know what it is? It's always looked at the person who is penetrating the other person is the one who's dominant, who's on top, who's in control. But when you really think about it, in any relationship, the person who is receiving or the person who has to in a
I think
especially
calling the bottom is a problem too. So I like that you switch it to receiving.
Yeah.
well, I mean, I think it's just a term. You know, it's just like it's a term. And here's the thing: terms mean things to different people. So I remember having a conversation with someone about the fact that I hated the term, "Oh, this is my partner," because to me, it always seemed like it was lessening the status of the person. But a lot of it, depending on where you come into this age-wise, it means something different to different people. You know, and I had this conversation with someone, and they were like, "No, this is my partner. Like, I don't say this is my boyfriend or this is my significant other. They're not my husband or whatever." But they loved the term partner because it gave them a sense of purpose and meaning versus just calling them a boyfriend or my significant other. It didn't hold as much meaning to them, you know. Whereas for me, it was
when you hear the word partner, do you automatically assume the person is a same-sex relationship? Because I do. I know that's probably wrong.
Now I've always assumed that, but I think that's changing now because you see a lot of heterosexual people saying, "Oh, this is my partner." They're not married, they're not engaged, they don't even want to associate themselves with those terms, but they'll say, "Oh, this is my partner." You know, they've been together for such a long time. Yeah, you do see it a lot now.
Yeah, but I'm always a little confused by it though. TJ, you don't get confused by that? Like I always am like, "Oh, okay, so they're in a same-sex relationship," and then the other person pops out and they got a wig on.
Less these days. So I feel like the term partner, I feel like it started gaining momentum like probably like in the 90s with a lot of like same-sex couples, lesbians, gay men, etc. I feel like I heard like a lot of lesbians and gay people use the term partner because obviously back then, like, and I think a partner was used as a long-term. This is my long-term person. So you use partner. Obviously, back in the 90s, gay marriage was not a thing. It was not legalized. So you couldn't call your person your husband or your wife. So you would have to say partner. So I think that's why it became so popular amongst gay men and lesbian people, and I guess queer people in general. Now, these days, I do hear and see heteros using that term too, and I think now it's more so it's what is the word, it's kind of moving away from a gender type of thing, so as it doesn't, so like straight people will say partner because even so, like let's say two cisgender heterosexual people are in a relationship together, they may call each other partner to kind of remove the gender from the other titles.
You think boyfriend, girlfriend. You think that signifies that they want to have a more modern version of a power dynamic in their relationship?
I do, yeah, and I think they're observing kind of this gender neutral, gender fluid culture and society that we seem to be moving towards. So I think back in the day, back in the 90s, whatever, it was more so about sexuality, and these days it's more about or less about gender. I think that's the way that the term has evolved, at least in my opinion, from how I see it used.
Okay. All right. Are we ready to move on to the next one?
Yeah, go for it.
Sure.
Okay. Number 3, struggles with hyper-masculine aesthetic, body discrimination, multiplicity of ways beauty standards oppress against those who do not fit the standard and provide privilege to those who do. So definitely in the LGBTQ plus community, there's tons of body shaming. I think more than anything, this is more prevalent. And this is a stigma that's been around since the beginning of it. You know, you always see, let's just talk about gay men, okay? The stereotypical gay man that is always portrayed in media amongst gay men themselves are hard bodies, you know, chiseled, gym rats that are, there's no room for any other body types, or, you know, a slim. And here's the other thing too. If you looked slim, if you had a slim body type, you will automatically assume that you are a bottom. Because, you know, a slim body presents, quote unquote, as more feminine, you know? If you did not fit this profile of this chiseled, beach-bodied man, you know, you were other within the community, and you weren't looked upon as desirable. And, you know, I think those walls are starting to come down a little bit more. You see a lot more acceptance of different body types. You know, now we've got different names for them. You know, you've got people that are on the larger side that have more hair that are called bears, or, you know, and it's more accepting now. So I think that definitely, it's still there, but it's not as prevalent as it used to be. What do you guys think?
Oh, I think you're right. I think it's still there. I think that it's funny because it's like you can't really go too far one way or the other, right? Like if you're too thin, then it's a problem. If you're too large, then it's a problem. It's like you got to land right in the middle and have like a very like defined sort of
like Goldilocks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like a really defined sort of way of being. But I don't know that. I think more and more I find that people are rejecting that sort of really rigid way of conceptualizing themselves as, you know, attractive. I think what the problem is that the public sphere is resisting catching up with, and because there's such a premium on what do you I would call it elite spaces. Yeah, and I, you know, the gays love exclusivity, right? And so when you have exclusive spaces, then there are always going to be very tight regulation on who can and can't occupy those spaces.
Okay.
So about that though, is that because, so when it comes to gay men, gay white men have always been centered.
Yeah.
And because gay white men are white men, white men by default, and obviously I'm not saying all, but white men by default like to exclude. Yeah. Therefore, when you have a community in which gay white men are centered, and so for however long, you know, the whole gay community was discriminated against up until, you know, Stonewall and you know, etc. But after that, even though it was a Black trans woman, or I'm not sure, well, yeah, she was trans, who started the whole thing. After that, you have the image of the gay community as gay white men. And so from then to now, if you're looking at the community and you're only centering or you're only focusing on gay white men who, again, by nature like to exclude others, you come with this community that we have now of people who want to exclude people who don't look like them. So basically gay, slim or toned or fit white men who exclude everybody else who don't look like them. If that makes sense.
It makes sense. I think you're making a credible point, not to mention that, you know, I don't want to take it, you know, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but I would I would say that your reference to it being a Black trans woman who initiated the Stonewall riots or freedom fights, as I like to call them, and then you see it quickly shift from a marginalized group of people to a less marginalized group of people occupying the center of the fight. It's the same thing that you see across diversity and inclusion spaces. It's the same thing that you see with equal rights bills. This is just like gay rights and all sorts of other amendments and policies were built on the back of the 14th Amendment, which was supposed to provide a more inclusive environment for people of color. So I think that your analysis is pretty on target.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to the last topic. And that is, how do social media and dating apps factor into current social dynamics, and how do they reflect the reality of the user? So basically, TJ, this was the first question you had wanted to ask earlier, and how does that fit into all of this?
I think TJ is our resident expert on this one.
Simply because I use dating apps?
No, because you're not, because you are dating.
Oh, well. That's debatable. That is debatable.
Well, your bag getting miles on it.
So yeah, okay. So on I'm going to exclude social media. On dating apps, yes, you see a lot, and well, for me, probably less these days, but you do see a lot of the mask for mask people, the fit for fit people.
Must be height, weight proportionate.
Yes, exactly. No fats, no femmes. Prefer white, Latin, and Asian. You know, it's it's all this. I guess you can call it I don't know if you would call it a subculture. It's this.
It's the reality of the way people think because they feel free to do that shit on those apps.
Exactly, especially behind a faceless profile. But yeah, it's you see that a lot. Again, I feel like I'm seeing it less these days, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Less these days on
less because
on
you're
apps.
on their list, or because it's on their list.
A combination of the two.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I certainly remember back in the day, you would see that a lot. Mask for mask, no femmes, no fats, no femmes, and blah 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 blah. So yeah, there's a ton of discrimination rampant on dating apps, and it's ridiculous. And on one hand, it's terrible, but on the other hand, it saves me time because I know who not to hit up. I know who to preemptively block, you know?
Right.
So I guess it depends on how you see it.
That's fair.
Yeah.
You know what? It's always a double-edged sword, in my opinion, right? Because like it's awful that people feel that way, but you can't control how people feel. So it's like, okay, thank you for auto excluding yourself from my, existence, right? Because
yeah. What really gets me is the people who have certain things on their profile, and
like what?
Let's say height, weight, proportionate, or
not.
No, not even that. Or they say, no men over a certain age, and I fall into one of those categories, but they hit me up. I'm like,
well, wait. So
just because you look,
do you think is age a thing? I mean, like, I think I think everyone has an age preference. Like, you probably don't want to date anyone that's like 15, 20 years younger than you. And I don't think that's discrimination necessarily.
I think it's the other way though, Chris. They don't want to date anybody who
older.
Older?
Yeah. It's older. Yeah. It's always older.
Okay.
Pedos.
They don't want to date a zaddy.
Which, okay, send them my way. But yeah, it's like, so it's the thing you find most often is the weight discrimination or the weight requirement, the height, weight proportion, and blah 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 blah. And so I mean, that's because I'm not going to call it a preference, because I feel like the word preference, a lot of people use the word preference to excuse their behavior. You're saying this is a requirement. So yeah, it doesn't make any sense because you hit me up. I clearly have my stats on there. You can see how much I weigh. You can see how tall I am. You can see my pictures. Why are you hitting me up? And a lot of times I will respond to a message that basically saying, I'm not your type. And that's all I'm going to say, because I'm confused as to why you're hitting me up. I read your profile. You are clearly excluding me. I don't agree with that, but that's on your profile. I'm not your type. So please get about my messages.
Okay. And what kind of response do you get to that?
Probably no response.
Yeah, usually no response, or a block, which is perfectly fine as well.
Or you get blocked?
Uh-huh.
Oh wow. How you gonna block me for saving you the trouble?
Child, I don't know. But I mean, I was trying my best not to say this episode, but I'm gonna go back to what I said a couple episodes. People are stupid. I tried my best not to say it. I tried my best not to say this episode.
No,
it
I
all
think
boils down to
you can
that.
say it. Yeah,
people are
stupid.
People are stupid. You yourself put this on your profile. You didn't have to, but you did.
Right.
And yet here you are sliding into my box, my inbox.
Yeah.
I can only, the only logical explanation is that people are stupid.
That's the only logical explanation.
That's the only logical. It boils down to people are stupid.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I don't know. I'm glad that we had this conversation, mostly because I think that it's something that I know people don't want to talk about. I know it's something that people don't want to hear. I know it's something that if it's not relevant to your life directly, that it seems to not be important. But I just always have to remind myself, as well as the people that I think are important to my life, that if the people who came before you felt the way that you felt and behaved in that way, then you would be in a much worse state than you are today. You know, and for as much as we get tired of hearing about a particular topic or a particular thing, you have to wonder what it's like for the people who are living it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Right,
I ain't preaching. I'm just saying.
Well, just say it. Say it.
Just saying.
All right. So let's just wrap up. I got two little, well, actually one statistic I want to read, and then we'll wrap up.
Cool.
46%, nearly half of Black adults say that they are extremely or very concerned about discrimination against LGBTQ people. About 1 in 5 Black adults say they are somewhat concerned about it. 22 and 28% of Black adults say they are a little or not at all concerned. So, I mean, it's definitely something that we need to continue to think about, continue to talk about, because half of Black adults think that it's an issue. Yeah. And it really is. And especially today in society that we live right now, LGBTQ plus IA rights are in the forefront. They're important. We need to continue to talk about it. I will continue to say this. You know, Florida is ground zero right now for it. Mm-hmm. It is ground zero with all the things that are going on. Don't say gay bills, not being able to talk about, being gay, being transgender, being Black in Florida, talking about slavery and Black history / American history in the United States. We have to be vigilant. We have to keep it talking about it, because when you don't talk about it, that's when it slips by, and all the things that we don't want to happen in the cover of night, even though they're doing it out and they're saying it out loud now. These are the things that they used to say in private. They were shamed to do it. They used to wear white hoods and run around and put crosses on lawns. Now they're not doing that. They're wearing khakis. They're walking around with tiki torches, and they're going into They're going into our schools. They're covering up books
and collecting a government check.
They just banned a book in Florida that talked about Rosa Parks and why she was asked to move to the back of the bus. It is crazy. It is crazy. These are some perilling times that we're living in.
So I can tell that I've noticed that. I was looking at how active the folks are tonight, and it makes me wonder about the concern for particular folks.
Speak on it.
Yeah, say more.
No, I'm just saying, like, I just find it a prevalent thing that people check in for stupid shit and check out for shit that matter.
Yep. Listen, we don't have to be afraid to even speak this. I noticed that there is a lack of comments in the comment section tonight. And that's what you're saying. So let's talk about that.
I thought I said that.
I'm agreeing with you. People will show up when we're kikiing,
cutting up and acting up.
Yeah, but I think that these conversations are very necessary.
Yeah.
These are things we have to talk about, and we're going to continue to talk about them. And it'll be up. People will have a chance to watch this in the replay and the comments.
The right people will watch it.
Yeah. Huh?
The right people will watch it.
Yeah. So I'm encouraged by that. I'm not discouraged by that.
Me either.
By that. Yeah.
I feel like I'm doing something right.
There you go. I'm
public
100%
service
with you. I'm 100% there with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want us to have fun, right? I'm glad that we can have fun, but I also am glad that we can be responsible too.
Yeah. And on that note, I think that this is a good time to talk about what we have planned for this channel.
Yeah.
We're going to continue to bring to you a weekly show every Thursday night. But we also want to let you guys know that in addition to that, we will be bringing you pre-recorded content on a regular basis. Starting next week, we're going to start a 3-part series where we're going to introduce basically the mission statement of why we're doing this channel, and then also do a deep dive into each one of us and why we're doing and who our target audience is individually, who we're speaking to, and what it means to us to be able to have this voice to be able to speak about it. We've actually recorded the first show already. It's in the can, and we're going to be releasing that next week. And I was the subject of the first interview. So I look forward for you guys to see that, and then to also see Rex and TJ's interview over the next coming weeks. I think it's going to be really important for people that watch us to really understand, why we're doing this. This is not something that we just picked up one day and said, hey, we're going to do this. This should be fun. No, this is something that's been in the works for us for over 2 years now. And if you followed us on Instagram and watched our journey and how we've progressed to this point now, you'll get a little bit better understanding. But I think starting next week's episode that we're going to post, you'll get to understand us even more. Because even for I'll just use myself as an example. Getting to this point has been a journey these past 2 years. When we started, we didn't know if I would be able to have these type of conversations publicly with these guys. And it wasn't for, like I said, I'll talk about it a little bit. It's not for a lack of being fearful, but it's just a lack of, I was very private, and there are certain things I just didn't want to talk about, but I think that it's very necessary. And you'll see that when the episode goes live next week. So we're going to continue to do this. We'll continue to talk about topics that are meaningful to us. We want to be able to talk about topics that are meaningful to you guys out there that are watching us as well. And we're going to continue to have fun. We want to have, good topics, fun topics that we can play with. Like, was it 2 weeks ago we did the Star Trek episode, more of like a quiz between us to see who knew what. And, it's fun. We like doing stuff like that. When we did our Valentine's special, we had a ton of fun with that. We all showed up in, nightwear, and just it was more of after dark conversation. But it was fun, a little educational, a little silly. We had a great time, and everyone that was in the room with us had an amazing experience as well. So we're going to continue to do that. But with that being said, do you guys have anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
No, I look forward to the next leg of our journey.
I would say, so since we are going to start posting recorded stuff, make sure you all not only like the videos, but also make sure you're subscribed, and also make sure you the notification bell, so that you know when stuff gets posted. Because obviously we are here live every Thursday
night
at 8-9 Central. Wait, is that right?
9 Eastern, 8 Central.
Yeah. That time. Here. So you know we're here at this time, but when we post our recorded or pre-recorded videos, you'll get a notification if you hit the bell. So just FYI.
Absolutely. So be sure to that you're following us here on the official conference call. So as TJ said, like this video, subscribe to this video, and hit the notification bell, and make sure you check all, so that when we start posting more and more content, you're going to get notified. But also you can follow us on our other social medias, especially like on Instagram. We're on Instagram as The Conference Call. I'm also on Instagram at constantly_changing for me on all my social medias. And TJ, where can they find you on Instagram?
On Instagram, Bizarre Hodgepodge, BZARHODGPODG.
And Rex, where can they find you?
You can find me.
Here we go.
He's trying to think of something very clever.
I wish he would.
You wish I would what?
Just give him whatever it is, because it ain't coming.
Fine. You can find me at Rags and Pieces Mag today on Instagram, and Rex the Writer on TikTok.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us for another great episode of The Conference Call. Join us next week with another great topic. And then also make sure you follow and subscribe and hit the bell, so that you can know when that first video drops next week, that pre-recorded video. And until then, we are out.
Here you go. Bye.
Come on, drop the music.
Well, I wanted to do I think I forgot what I was going to say.
Oh my God.
You messed up my perfect outro.
In the broadcast, it's over. What? Oh. A mess. Bye, y'all.
Bye.